Here I am at a one-bedroom private museum dedicated to one of the members of the Enola Gay. I'm here doing research for the Nagasaki bombing, and this right here just happens to be the ashtray that was on the Enola Gay when they dropped the first atomic bomb on August 6, 1945. This ashtray was the ashtray used by Richard Nelson, who was a radio operator. But this is the actual ashtray that was on that famous flight. Also in this personal museum dedicated to Richard Nelson, we have his silk map that he took with him, so if they happen to have to ditch the plane in the ocean, that this map would not dissolve like paper would. That's why they made it out of silk. So you can see that here. Absolutely fascinating. And this is also Richard Nelson's signal mirror that he took on that famous flight with him. And I'm going to show you a picture here. In this picture, you can see Richard Nelson right there. He is the guy in the middle with that hat on, the radio operator, Paul Tibbitt's radio operator, and the one chosen to be the radio operator on the Enola Gay. And here's the cool thing. In this little museum, if I turn and I come over here, you can see that hat that he wore on that famous flight is right here in my hand. So it's been an honor and a privilege to be at this little personal museum dedicated to Richard Nelson, someone's private museum. And here are his medals. And that's a picture of Richard. And I believe that's his silver star right there that he received after the atomic bomb mission. The actual ashtray. Wow. If you love history like I do, you too would be feel privileged and honored to be able to touch this type of history. Richard Nelson was a good friend of mine. Unfortunately, we lost him February 1st, 2003. Here's another photo of him next to Paul Tibbets and other members of the Enola Gay, and I have to say that Richard Nelson was one of the kindest and nicest people I have ever met in my life. It all unfolded from Tinian Island in the Pacific Ocean. It was on this spot right here, the number 2 bomb loading pit, that the American B-29 named Boxcar was loaded with the second atomic bomb called Fat Man on the evening of August 8, 1945. Boxcar was scheduled to depart for the mission at 3 a.m. August 9, 1945. However, the bomber's flight engineer, John Kuharek, discovered the fuel pump for a 640-gallon reserve tank that was placed inside the rear bomb bay. That fuel pump was not working. After Boxcar pilot Charles Sweeney discussed the matter with Colonel Paul Tibbets for several minutes, they decided to continue the mission anyway. Paul Tibbets told them they could complete the mission without the fuel, and it was there to act as a counterweight to the weight of the bomb in the front bomb bay. They departed from runway Able, heading west. That's this runway here. So they took off from here and headed in this direction. This runway is 8,500 feet long. Their original plan was to rendezvous over Iwo Jima, right here. However, bad weather forced them to fly directly to their new rendezvous point, which was over Yakushima Island, right here, just south of Japan. Right here. On the way to Yakushima, from Tinian, they made a straight line right to Yakushima. On the way there, at about 7 a.m., a steady flashing red light on the black box console that was monitoring Fat Man's internals began to rapidly flash, indicating the bomb was arming itself. Weaponeer assistant Philip Barnes had the box open within seconds. He found 2 switches had somehow been set in reverse positions. He switched them back and the problem went away. But the crew had a huge scare thinking the bomb was arming itself and was going to blow up while they were flying from Tinian to Yakushima right here. Boxcar's pilot, Sweeney, was instructed to not spend more than 15 minutes waiting for the blast instrument plane named the Great Artiste and the camera plane named Big Stink. The Great Artiste arrived within the 15-minute time frame. Big Stink did not. And instead of waiting 15 minutes, Charles Sweeney ended up waiting 45 minutes before departing for the primary target, the city of Kokura. Kokura is up here. The rendezvous point was right here. They headed up in this direction around this point and then went straight in to Kokura. Right here. There was an article written that said the aiming point was just south of Kokura Castle. It was a military industry area, which I believe was right here. Information on the Nagasaki bombing has been very difficult to find. Aiming points and compass headings have been extremely difficult to find. So difficult, I have not found them. If you happen to know where this information is, please share it with me because I would love to know. As they came in for the bombing run, they had strict instructions to make a visual bombing drop. So as they came in, Bombardier Kermit Behan could not see the aiming point because smoke from a nearby firebombing obscured the ground. From Yawata here, they said a firebombing the day before, the smoke was blowing across and covering the aiming point over here. It was said by Fred O'Leary, who was the backup co-pilot on the flight, that Sweeney came through and Kermit Behan said no drop. So Sweeney went up, made a left-hand turn, and came back through the city again. Once again, the smoke covering the ground. Kermit Behan said, no drop. Sweeney then came through and made another turn, coming from a different angle, hoping that they could see the aiming point. This was his 3rd attempt, but once again, Behan said, no drop. He could not see the aiming point. At this point, flak was getting closer, and fighter planes were trying to make their way up to the bomber, which was at about 30,000 feet. Also, after spending too much time at the rendezvous point and not having access to their reserve tank, fuel was becoming a serious problem. Sweeney asked navigator James Van Pelt to set a course to their secondary target, Nagasaki. Van Pelt set a course straight for Nagasaki right over here, and the distance between Kokura and Nagasaki is about 100 miles. When they arrived, they only had enough fuel for one run. As they approached the city, they could see that it was under cloud cover, so they decided to make a radar drop. Even though they were instructed to make a visual drop, they said a radar drop on the city was better than wasting the bomb by dropping it in the ocean. So they set up for a drop, possibly in this approximate direction here, and came into the city. Now originally, their original aiming point was right about here in the city. They were going to take out all the military industries and the harbor here. But because of the cloud cover, they couldn't see this. So they ended up going in this direction, aiming for this area here. About 45 seconds out from the radar drop, Bombardier Kermit Behan saw an opening in the clouds. He said he could see the city and took over for a visual drop. What he saw, or what they said he saw, was this track that you can see right here that is still here to this day. In 45 seconds, he aimed and released the bomb. As soon as he released the bomb, probably in this general area here, Charles Sweeney made a 155-degree turn to the left, dipping the nose from 29,500 feet to 28,500 feet, and Boxcar was about 12 miles away, which would place them approximately in here when they were hit by the first shock wave. As they were flying to this point, 45 seconds after they released the bomb, the sky lit up. The backup co-pilot, Fred O'Leary, said it was like 1,000 suns. Boxcar was 12 miles away when the first shock wave hit them with a force of about 3.5 Gs. Sweeney then turned the plane to a left turn and started to circle the mushroom cloud. If I zoom in to the hypocenter, you can see the track that he was aiming for, and the bomb actually detonated 1,890 feet above the ground right here, straight up from here. You can also use Google Earth to get a street view of this location. So straight up from here is where the bomb detonated. And they have this memorial here in its place. At this point, their fuel situation was serious, so they made a beeline for Yontan Airfield on Okinawa Island, which is right here. They were doing everything they could to preserve fuel, and as they were getting closer, they went over the top of Aishima Island right here. They were about 20 minutes out. Charles Sweeney began to radio Mayday, Mayday to air traffic control on Yontan Airfield, but there was no response. So they fired off every flare they had. As a result, other planes cleared the way as they came in hot. And they came straight in to Yontan Airfield, which was right here. And the runway that they landed on, I'm pretty sure this is the runway they landed on. You can still see remnants of it running right through here. If we get in closer, you can see it says former Yontan Airfield, and this was most likely the airstrip here that Boxcar landed on after dropping the atomic bomb. As they came in, their airspeed was about 150 miles an hour, and they touched down about halfway down the runway, and Sweeney had to slam on the brakes to get the airplane slowed down. As they taxied to get gas, their two outboard engines sputtered and quit. Once they stopped, their flight engineer, John Kuharik, emptied the gas tanks, and they only had 7 gallons of fuel left. They fueled up, took a break, ate a meal, and then headed back to Tinian. When they arrived back at Tinian, unlike Enola Gay, there were no lights, no cameras, no journalists. There was no big brass there to welcome them home. It was simply their ground crew anxiously awaiting their safe return. And they ended up making it back to Tinian about 4 a.m. So there you have it. A brief explanation of Boxcar's Nagasaki atomic bomb run, explained here using Google Earth on the Forrest Haggerty channel.